Kludge is converting a lot of their lineup into magnetic, and it's just so cool that even their 87 keyboard is now magnetic as well. This has 8000 Hz polling rate, so it should perform at competitive level response times. Then, with a 10 keyless layout, this allows for more space for your mouse movements. This, my dear friends, is a new release from Royal Kludge, the C87 Magnetic Hall Effect Rapid Trigger Capable keyboard. This is snap tap capable and has all other magnetic keyboard features you will be looking for, such as DKS, mod tap, or toggle key. The RK-R87 was once my main mechanical keyboard before I even blew up here on YouTube, so it was a very good feeling to circle back to one of my main keyboards back in the day. Hi, my name is Daniel with the Biboyharanero team, and we've been reviewing keyboards, mice, and audio gear since 2019. Consider subscribing so you're always updated with our new videos and new product releases. Now back to the C87, this has NKRO or all key anti-ghosting, so no interferences should occur on paper with the keyboard, even if you use all 10 fingers and 10 toes all at the same time. This is beneficial especially for gaming, so you may use the WASD keys and arrow keys, and still the keyboard would register all of them without any issues. As a standard, I had to test this out for gaming just to see if I find anything that feels off, like delays, keystroke inconsistencies, and overall feel. But nothing felt off, and it performed as I expected. This keyboard is a wired keyboard, and that is understandable because it has an 8K polling rate. It's really cool to connect the cable onto this because of the organizer built in underneath the keyboard. We'll go over this in more detail later on, as I do have a comment about it. The switches my unit came with are branded Royal Kludge, yet they have similar characteristics as Gateron Jades. I believe these have 37 gram springs within, but for some reason, I kind of sense about 45-ish, but I could be wrong. But later, I will go over this in more detail and give you more information. I'm not sure what switches are compatible with the PCB installed on the RKC87, so switch compatibility could potentially be an issue. However, if any of the switches break, this has a hot swap 2-pin PCB, so you can simply pull out the switch and replace them with the extra switches that comes in the box. Now, every magnetic keyboard highly depends on software performance, so let's explore that real quick. So we have here the software of the C87, and I think it's worth mentioning in the beginning that we have here 4 configurations to choose from. You also have the main tabs at the left hand side, and the first tab being light settings. Everything here is self-explanatory with the modes right here, brightness and speed. This is the main light, in other words, the lights in the keys which you are customizing. If you click on ambient light, then you're customizing the lights at the side of the keyboard. Again, you have modes right here. Onto the next tab, we have performance settings. Here's where you set your global travel distance, or in other words, actuation points. Mine is at 0.8, 0.87. Yep. Rapid trigger settings is here as well. You have your dead zone settings right there. Polling rate selection. This is where you do your calibration. And here is where you select what switch is installed on your keyboard. Though it's written in Chinese, I don't understand Chinese. So I think this has to be improved in terms of translation. Let's move on. The custom key, this is where you do your key binding. And I think it's worth mentioning that you could bind your mouse buttons onto your keyboard. Onto the advanced keys, I've already set up SOCD on A and D. Now, it's again self-explanatory. If you're new to magnetic keyboards, you can basically hold down A and tap D. Every time you tap on D, or every time D actuates, it cancels out A. So you get a perfect AD transition. Now, as for one of my favorite magnetic keyboard features is DKS. Let me show you what DKS can do. So if I lightly press on W, the character in Assassin's Creed crouches. If I full press it, he will sprint. So that's how you use dynamic keystroke. Some of the other useful tools that I use is mod tap. It allows you to basically press on a switch or press on a key, and it's going to hold that key for you. Actually, that feature is for toggle key. I'm sorry, it's not for mod tap. So basically, I use DKS, SOCD, and toggle key. The rest, I don't use them. Moving on to macro management, I've tried recording some quick macros here, and turns out it doesn't read your mouse inputs. I tried to add in a mouse key here. I click on the plus, see if we could insert a mouse button, but I couldn't find any mouse buttons here. So it seems like that's nothing you can do. So if that could be added in, this would have more versatility. And in the last tab, we have the update tab. This is where you upgrade your firmware or reset your keyboard. Pretty self-explanatory. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section. Inside the box, you get the keyboard, cable, key puller combo, 4 extra switches, and its documentation. You also get a PET anti-dust cover for when you're not using the keyboard. Do not throw that away, as me, personally, I use those to stave off dust buildup. The cable is generic and I have no complaints about it, and since we already touched on the cable organizer underneath the C87, I think it's worth mentioning that this might be cable sensitive. So if you have any cables that have thick tips, they may not fit the USB-C input. This may also cause issues with thick cables, which may not directly fit onto the cable organizer. But that's all good, as on the bright side, you get to position the cable, be it in the left side, middle, or panned to the right. Now let's move on. With the keyboard's 87 key layout, it's average in weight, and it's just about enough as I expected from a TKL layout. It's not too light, so as to move around your desk. Yet, at the same time, it's not too heavy that I think it's still something you can pack into your bag and not weigh on it too much. Speaking of its layout, the number one thing I love about 87 key layouts is the dedicated print screen button. This usually gets omitted in 65 or even 75% layouts, and for some reason, keyboard companies still do not listen when it comes to user feedback regarding available keys. I am glad this has it, but anyways, moving on, looking around the keyboard, it is fully made of ABS plastic. However, it's not the cheaply printed ABS plastic, and it still has some thickness to it, which I think makes this keyboard amply sturdy. Looking at the sides, you see some cutaways that allow for the LED strip to show, and I think it looks really cool and gamery. The body is also edgy, or has a lot of sharp edges, which I think is a good aesthetic choice, but we'll go over this in more detail in the aesthetic segment. When tapping around the keyboard, it feels really very solid, and that is all thanks to its internal damping materials. If you look closely at the bottom padding, it's actually made of silicone, which is the most dense kind of damper in keyboards and absorbs a lot of the vibrations and hollowness too. Overall, I have no complaints with the build quality on the RK C87. It's just exactly as I pictured it and exactly like that of my old friend, the RK R87. The keycaps here are cherry profile PBT double shot keycaps in a tri-colored theme. I am not a fan of the colorway, but I'd had to give a kudos to RK for the contrast of the legends, except for the escape key, enter key, and arrow keys. I'm not really sure why white on pink was a good idea, but this is what we get on the RKC 87's colorway. And by the way, I'm not sure if this is the only colorway that this will be offered in. I believe there will be more. Stabilizers on RK keyboards are always good because they do not wobble on the positioning plate. So good news, ladies and gentlemen, as it is the case with this unit. Stabilizers are very tightly placed on the plate and rattling is nearly non-existent. Nearly. When tapping onto the stabilized keys, I still do hear some slight rattling, but very slight. And compared to other budget keyboards that I've tried, it has pre-lubricated stabilizers and also tight stabs. These are good enough. I still would re-lube them with dielectric grease to get that perfectly tuned stabilizers, but I think it's not necessary. Now onto the switches. I've researched before that this has 37 gram springs within, but my fingers feel 45-ish. Okay, let's say around 40 to 45 grams just to be safe. And even if we don't know the exact weight of the springs, I think it's still good for gaming because it's not too heavy in terms of spring weight, and still it would perform okay with typing. Yet some heavy fingers may find the keys are a little bit too soft. In that case, although this is a hot swap PCB, again, we're not sure about its switch compatibility, so the best way to go is to swap out the springs within every switch, or you could just save time and just adapt to it. Overall, they sound good, and it's also not overly wobbly, unlike other budget switches. My fingers did feel some level of scratching inside the switch though, yet it's not entirely bothering. Here's a sound test. Again, I'm not sure what colorways this will be offered in, so we might have to wait for its actual release. Or you may freely go to the description box below to see the product page of the RKC87. So yes, links will be down there, and they may potentially be affiliate links of mine, so I earn commission from those links. Yet, as I am writing the script, I'm still not sure if those will be affiliated links. But anyways, back to the keyboard. I personally am not a fan of the colorway, and this is because I prefer masculine colors, or maybe even the simpler black, white, and gray. Having pink on a black keyboard is all good, but pastel pink? This has branding at the front of the keyboard by the right side with RK, and it's not too in your face, as the branding is not too big. Then you get light indicators above the arrow keys, which I think was a good addition. Circling back to the keycaps, you get sub-legends by the F keys to show you some alternate key functions. And looking closely at the scroll key by the upper right corner of the keyboard, it has alternate functions for RGB. So pressing on the function key and scroll lock will cycle through the RGB modes. Pressing on the function key and the pause key will change the color of the LED. If you look closely at the insert button, it has an alternate alternate print to it as a sign that this is what you press to change the RGB modes on the side lights. RGB controls is done very well and is also very easy to find without looking at the manual. And for my final comment, I think the RGB is fairly bright. It would satisfy RGB fans. So yeah, there's that. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. Again, links are in the description on where to get your RK C87. I'll see you guys again next time.